We are celebrating the opportunity to talk about the earth and our relationship to it all month long. And I found myself sharing with Frida via email and text that it was a bit of a challenge to save some things for next week, because next week we're going to have an Earth Day celebration. So this week's topic is called Feet on the Ground. And I wanted to begin by sharing something that's written by Ernest Holmes. The funny thing was, I thought that it was in that book, this thing called You. And I couldn't find it. And I haven't really made a notation as to where it came from. I only knew that it had been written by Ernest Holmes. I got on the minister's listserv and nobody else knew either. So anyway, this wonderful quotation comes from the gentleman who founded this work back in 1926 or so, and it still rings true today. I happen to love it, and I'll tell you why. I am a Pisces, and we honor all paths here, okay? So I have typically spent most of my time with my head in the clouds, and it was strongly recommended that I learn how to be grounded if I really wanted to have a full life. So this is right up my alley. We do have a physical body, and we want it to be well. We do have a mind, and we wish it to be composed. We also are a living spirit. And moving down to the other portion here. But for some reason, which we do not understand because of our ignorance, we have accepted the physical forces but haven't yet completely tied in the spiritual ones. Now we need to unite the whole thing into one system. Keep our head in the clouds and our feet firmly planted on the earth, while the mind maintains a balance between the two. This balance is best maintained when the mind accepts the simple fact that we live, move, and have our being in a living spirit, and that it flows through us, as the ancient Talmud said, closer to us than our neck vein. We've heard this many times at this point in our lives, that this special thing we've been searching for is within each of us. And we've certainly heard a great deal at this point in our lives about the importance of recognizing that we are spirit, mind, and body, that we are trifold, that we are more than one aspect. And in recognizing and understanding and nourishing and caring for the whole is how we have a whole and healthy and vibrant life. So this is not a new concept, that we have a mind to care for, that we have a body to care for, and that we have a spirit to recognize within each of us. One of the things that Ernest Holmes is saying here is that this balance between the inner and the outer, between the head in the clouds and the feet on the ground, is a necessity if we wish to have a whole and fulfilling life. If we wish to experience the gifts of the kingdom, or the gifts of being here in time and space, whatever we choose to call it, if we'd like to have the whole package, we need to understand its parts and keep them united and in balance. He also says that the way to do that is to have the mind maintain that balance. And that the way that the mind can maintain that balance is simply to remember that we have spirit flowing through us and all around us all the time. We have been evolving from a perception of separation from our good. Whether we believe that we were kicked out or we fell, that we did something wrong, or that we were born incomplete, whatever belief system we might be finding our way back from, and whatever other ideas and opinions we may have gathered along the way, we're all coming to this realization that we're whole and perfect. We're complete and free. That all we need do is understand and love, embrace every part of ourselves, and embody each of those. The rest is taken care of. In fact, we find out that it always has been. We just forgot. We may have been invited to forget. We may have been convinced by someone else who had forgotten that this thing wasn't real. We know better now because we're here together. So this isn't as much about remembering who we are as looking at this concept of balance. Now, a lot of us look at this in terms of perhaps visiting a holistic practitioner and saying, oh, what I really need to do is remember to do my spiritual practice. What I really need to remember to do is to do my physical practice. What I really need to do is change my diet. What I really need to do, and we still feel this sort of, this thing coming from outside of us telling us what we should do. It's not the kind of motivation I grab a hold of. I usually run away from it. So coming to it from a place within makes all the difference, doesn't it? There's another quote here, a shorter one from Thomas Troward. And the interesting thing is, I didn't plan it this way, but the two classes that are starting this week, the first one on Tuesday evenings is based on the teachings of Ernest Holmes, and the second one on Thursday evenings is based on the teachings of Thomas Troward. Troward says the error of the extreme idealist, and that was me, is endeavoring to realize the absolute without the relative. And the error of the extreme materialist is endeavoring to realize the relative without the absolute. On the one side, the mistake is in trying to realize an inside without an outside. And on the other, in trying to realize an outside without an inside. Both are necessary to the formation of a substantial entity, as he calls us. So what does that mean in plain English? That means that for those of us who have all of our Sanskrit mantras memorized and all of our yoga postures down pat, for all of us who have our altars beautifully set up here, and I have all of those, by the way. If those of us who have everything figured out in that area, and it feels really comfortable and safe and nourishing, I'll tell you, I wrote in journals since I was about 9 years old. And I kept everything I wrote until about 2 years ago, and then I had this massive ceremonial bonfire in the middle of a park in winter, and Rick helped me. It took a long time to tear all those pages up. But I had it all figured out on paper. I had it all worked out up here. I had it all worked out in dreams. I had it all worked out in words and feelings. But getting me off the mat, off the cushion, out into the world, that was where I struggled. So I was burdened with these great dreams of possibility for myself, for my friends and my family and the world. And I do mean burdened by them, because I was not only inspired, but I was like, oh, this has to happen. But I didn't know how to get off the cushion and off the mat and out the door and into the world to be part of sharing that and having it happen. Others of us may have become very accomplished at getting stuff done. And again, when I reference back to this concept of astrology, which is one of a gazillion teachings with its own science behind it, just like so many others. But the belief system there says that I have one of me swimming in one direction and one swimming in the other, and I get to reconcile those two. Well, so the other half is extremely efficient, always with a fresh to-do list, always with all kinds of tasks lined up to happen next and next and next and next. With Google Calendar reminders happening daily in my email box to tell me what's next, lest I forget it. That part of me has difficulty sitting on the cushion, getting on the mat, sitting down and letting it be okay to be still, letting it be okay to reflect. That's why I like this topic so much, because whether we have our head in the clouds and our feet are not touching the ground, or we've got our feet on the ground, but we've forgotten what it's like to connect with the ethereal, with the absolute, with the realm of spirit. Either way, we're living a half-life. Either way. There's hope, though, and there's more than that. There's a solution, because if we look at the ancient Hermetic teachings, there's an interesting piece in there that talks about managing polarities. If you think about it, whether it's head in the clouds or feet on the ground, whether it's always favoring the inner life or always being caught up in the outer world, they are opposite poles of one thing, really. And if we work our way toward the center, no matter which direction you're talking about, if we work our way toward the center, we will find that balance that we're seeking. Now, what I have done, as you can well imagine, is to go back and forth between all journaling and no action, all prayer and meditation and nothing happening out there. And then I'd be like, oh my gosh, look at all the stuff to do, you know? And then the other one is to be so caught up in doing everything out there that I've forgotten my center, I've forgotten my identity, and I'm just one big jangled nerve. You know how it feels to be in that position as well. What I have found is that if I just practice daily and teach myself to access the middle way, now that's Buddhism, access the center point, I will find that balance. It's not either or. This is not an either or universe, an either or life. How about this concept of whether you should go out there and make a living or follow your heart? I have been looking at that one for about 15 years or so. Determined, because of what I've learned in spiritual study, what I've heard and read, that it must be possible to have both. This could be the church of have your cake and eat it too, right? There's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. If there's one power, one presence, one substance, one activity in this universe, and not two doing battle, really, not two trying to win your favor, but one, that means that everything unlike that one power is false. There's an interesting thing that Ernest Holmes, our founder, teaches us, which is to turn away from conditions. And it came up a little bit in what Jackie was sharing. It's not that we say there is no problem, there is no problem, there is no problem. That's the kind of denial that will get you in trouble. I've heard that different types of ostriches either bury their heads in the sand or dunk them down below the water to hide, to protect themselves from harm. Well, you can imagine how that works, right? What would they die of? Now, I don't know enough about this, and I didn't look it up to speak with authority. But think about it. One thing that could happen is suffocation, because that method of hiding isn't working, and it actually deprives you of something else you require, right, for survival. The other could be that you get eaten anyway. So all around, it sounds like a bad idea. So sometimes when people first hear about this teaching, they think you're just supposed to pretend everything's all sweetness and light, no matter what you're going through, and turn away from conditions and say, oh, there is no illness, there is no war, I don't have, whatever, I just don't believe in it. That's not enough. Trust me, a bunch of us have tried that. It's not enough. You can't just turn away from what isn't. You need to intend what to put in the place of it in your belief system. We can't just say, there's no strife. We have to say, love is present. In the group that we did this past summer with Greg Braden's The Secrets of the Lost Mode of Prayer, we talked about the difference of praying for something and just praying something, which means to acknowledge that it already exists and to use the creative power of our thought to welcome it into our experience and whatever and whomever we are looking at, by knowing that truth is present here. Knowing that truth is present there. There's a difference. So when we say turn away from conditions, we don't mean to be an ostrich. We don't mean to be in denial. We don't mean to run and hide. We mean to know something else. And sometimes that's what's required of us when we get caught up in the outside world, is to go within. And again, if we spend all our time comfortable in our little spiritual nest, knowing the truth, and what is a challenge for us is to go out that door and to live it and to engage with other people. The relative means that we're out there relating. The material means that we're out there in the physical world. If that is a challenge for us, then that's where we increase our practice. That's where we add our work. It's different for each one of us. The way that this relates to this concept of Earth in terms of our relationship with the planet is no different. I've been watching a lot of documentaries lately on the history of religion in America and on the history of civil rights and on the history of the environment. And I just sit there on the couch afterwards so moved I'm not sure where to begin. But you know, in every one of those series, what I've recognized is evolution. In every one of them. No matter what we've done, no matter how many times we've gone afield, as it were, and gotten out of balance, there's been a return by someone and someone else. And someone has done that and told the story of it and shared it with someone else. There's progress. And the thing is that those aspects of perfection are constant. They cannot be taken away from, nor ever added to. There's nothing to go get. There's nothing really to accomplish or create. Simply something gorgeous and perfect already to remember. And when we remember it inside, it shows up outside. When we remember it by putting our head in the clouds, and then we walk firmly with our feet planted on the ground, we bring it here to the ground. I open with those treatments that I do, saying that we are heaven on earth, that we are spirit made manifest, that we are stardust animated. And I forget where I got all of those from. I think the last one might have been from Chopra. But the fact is, that's what we're here to do. There's one more thing before I close, which is another universal spiritual principle. It's this idea that we give without thought of receiving. We do without thought of what the result will be. Because thinking about what we'll get back or thinking about what we will accomplish takes us away from the present moment journey itself. And it changes the outcome. So this is mastery. You know, for years we have had people do all of the work for some while they anchor spiritual principle for us. And others to do all of the anchoring of spiritual principle while still others take care of the material world for them. And that has worked for as long as it has. But those mystery schools and those monasteries and those teachings have all opened up and come out into the world, and we're being invited to do something even more interesting, perhaps even more challenging, which is both. Yeshua ben Joseph said, be in this world, but not of it. Well, I'll tell you, one or the other is way easier, but we have come to anchor this here. So whether that has to do with ecology, or whether that has to do with how you relate to other people, whether that has to do with how you relate to resources, it all makes a difference. Because we're all connected, and everything we do is connected. So I invite you to take this home with you. And whatever it's meaning for you today, whatever it's touching upon for you, to bring it in to your daily life. You know where there is balance or imbalance. You know where you can add or reduce emphasis. Something in you knows that thing that you get to go do next, whatever it is. And whatever that is perfect and right for who you are and where you are on that infinite continuum. You could have a next door neighbor who is just beginning to do something in favor of the environment that you've been doing for 15 years. That person is awakening. That's a beautiful thing. And if there is something within you that is awakening to go a little further than you would before, then that's yours to do. Each of us is on a continuum of awakening, of evolution. So just take that home and remember that today the assignment is to keep your head in the clouds. Absolutely. And your feet firmly planted upon the earth.